book signing after the event. Our guest will be there to sign his books. And to remind you that a portion of the book sales benefits the San Antonio Library Foundation, a very important institution in our community. My name is Arturo Madrid, and I'm recently retired after many years as a professor of the humanities at Trinity University. But most importantly, Martin Espada, our guest today, and I have crossed paths over the years. It's been remarkable. At least a couple of times in San Antonio. There's already been one more. Once in New Mexico, and probably numerous other moments. And so it is my great honor to be host. But before I do so, a nod to somebody that you want to meet and who's responsible for having our guest here today. Bill Fisher, sitting right back there, who lobbied to have Martin Espada invited here. I'm known for starting on time. My motto is never penalize people who show up on time, and so we're on time. These are my introductory notes. I'm the only thing between you and Martin Espada, and I do not want to get in that way any further. Accesible, vital, muscular, compelling, engaged, comprometida, comprometido. These are a few of the descriptors applicable to the poetic work of our guest, Martin Espada, author of, among other books of poetry, The Republic of Poetry, Alabanza, Imagine the Angels of Brea, The Trouble Ball, The Meaning of the Shovel, and most recently, Vivas to Those Who Have Failed. His poetic voice, deeply informed by the multiple cultures and histories of the Americas, is infused with drama and resonates with passion. His poems constitute lyrical fanfares for ordinary human beings, homages to their sacrifices, recognition of their aspirations, testimonies to their courage. His poetry empowers the timid, discomfits the smug, and gives applause to the predator. I'm honored to present to you a true American poet con una voz singular de nuestra América, Martin Espada.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas.
Muchas gracias, Arturo. I would like to thank Arturo Madrid not only for that eloquent introduction, but for everything he's done to support my work over the years and to support the work of other Latino writers. Please give him a hand again, Arturo Madrid. And I also like to thank the man who's become my guardian angel in this trip to San Antonio, Bill Fisher. It's good to see old friends here. Some people I haven't seen in a very long time. Cesar Salgado, Fernando Rangel, just saw Naomi Nye come into the room. There she is. It's very good to be back. I used to come in and out of San Antonio all the time in the 80s because I am a Galapagos tortoise. I've been around a long time, but I haven't been here in many years. And this is a place with roots for me that I'm going to explain as we go along. I want to begin. I'm going to be reading mostly from this book, Vivas to Those Who Have Failed, which is just out in paperback and is available in Barnes & Noble tin. But I want to begin with a tribute to a poet. And that only makes sense because there are many poets here today, there are many poets in this room. This is a poem about a poet friend. He was a Portuguese-American working-class poet from Cape Cod. And his name was José Jogo Gouveia. Joe Gouveia was a lucky man. Joe Gouveia loved poets and he loved poetry. Unashamedly, without ego, imagine that. And he wanted nothing in return except the love of poets and poetry. So this was a lucky man. And lucky in every way but one. So when the cancer came back, I wrote this poem for Joe. I believe in writing elegies for the living. I believe in writing elegies to people while they're still here, while it's time for them to appreciate those words. Thank you. And so I wrote this poem for Joe. And Joe started calling people up and reading it to him. And then he called me. He had a request. He said, I have my first book coming out next April. It was April 2014. He said, I want your poem to be the forward for my book. The entire forward. I had never heard of such a thing. I said, what? He said, yeah, the forward. So I said, okay. And sure enough, it became the forward to Joe's book. Joe's book came out in April of 2014. And Joe died in May. He stayed alive long enough for the book to come out. Don't tell me poetry makes nothing happen. So we'll begin here with this poem. And it's called Here I Am for José Jogo Gouveia, 1964 to 2014. He swaggered into the room, a poet at a gathering of poets. And the drinkers stopped crowding the cash bar. The talkers stopped their tongues. The music stopped hammering the walls, the way a saloon falls silent when a gunslinger knocks open the swinging doors. Jogo, grinning in gray stubble and wrap-around shades, leather Harley vest, shirt yellow as a prospector's hallucination, sleeve buttoned to hide the bandage on his arm when the IV pumped chemo through his body a few hours ago. The nurse swabbed the puncture and told him he could go, and Jogo would go, gunning his red band from the Cape to Boston, striding past the cops who guarded the hallways of the Grand Convention Center as if to say, here I am! The butcher's son, the Portuguese, the roofer, the carpenter, the cab driver, the biker poet. This was Jogo, who would shout his ode to Evel Knievel in biker bars till the brawlers rolled in beer and broken glass, who married Josie from Brazil on the beach after the oncologist told him he had 2 months to live 2 years ago. That's not enough for me, he said, and will say again when the cancer comes back to coil around his belly and squeeze hard like a python set free and starving in the swamp. He calls me on his cell from the hospital, and I can hear him scream when they press the cold X-ray plates to his belly, but he will not drop the phone. He wants the surgery today, right now, surrounded by doctors with hands blood speckled like the hands of his father, the butcher, sawing through the meat with a family feast. The patient's chart should read, this is Jogo. After every crucifixion, he snaps the cross across his back for firewood. He will roll the stone from the mouth of his tomb and blow a strike. On the night he silenced the drinkers chewing ice in my ear, a voice in my ear said, what the hell is that man doing here? And I said, that man there, that man will live forever. So, I mentioned before Arturo has been a benefactor to me in more ways than one. And in one particular way, he performed me a great service because he enabled me to write the following poem. Arturo drove me to the airport in El Paso. And he made a point of taking me to one end of the parking lot at the airport. And he pointed, he said, look at that. And there it was, the largest equestrian statue in the world. It happens to be a statue of Juan de Oñate, the conquistador, the so-called discoverer of New Mexico. Never mind the fact there were already people living there. But Arturo showed me this statue of Oñate and said, I hope you can write a poem about this. And usually when people give me those kinds of assignments, I don't know. But then John Nichols, a friend of mine who wrote a little book called The Milagro Beanfield Ward, he took me to another town near Taos called Alcalde, and there was another statue of Juan de Oñate, and I said, I have to do something about this. And in fact, in Alcalde, somebody already had. So this is a tale of two statues. It's called The Right Foot of Juan de Oñate, and it's for John Nichols and Arturo Madrid. On the road to Taos, in the town of Alcalde, the bronze statue of Juan de Oñate, the Conquistador, kept vigil from his horse. Late one night, a chainsaw sliced off his right foot, stuttering to the ball of his ankle as Oñate's spirit scratched and howled like a dog trapped within the bronze body. 4 centuries ago, after his cannon fire burst to burn hundreds of bodies and blacken the adobe walls of the Acoma Pueblo, Oñate wheeled on his startled horse and spoke the decree. All Acoma males above the age of 25 would be punished by amputation of the right foot. Spanish knives sawed through ankles. Spanish hands tossed feet into piles like fish at the marketplace. There was prayer and wailing in a language Oñate did not speak. Now, at the airport in El Paso, across the river from Juarez, another bronze statue of Oñate rises on a horse frozen in fury. The city fathers smash champagne bottles across the horse's legs to christen the statue, and Oñate's spirit remembers the chainsaw carving through the ball of his ankle. The Acoma Pueblo still stands. Thousands of brown feet walk across the border. The desert of Chihuahua, the shallow places of the Rio Grande, the bridges from Juarez to El Paso. Oñate keeps watch. High on horseback above the Rio Grande, the law of the Conquistador rolled in his hand, helpless as a man with an amputated foot, spirit scratching and howling like a dog within the bronze body. And so the atrocities continue into the present day. And who knows, centuries from now, somebody may be sawing through the ankle on the statue of Donald Trump. Let us hope. And indeed, the atrocities continue to the present day. This next poem is about police violence against people of color. Of course, overwhelmingly, but not exclusively against African Americans. Latinos too are falling. And this particular poem documents, refers to 8 different cases of police murder. Some of them will be familiar from the details, although I do not use names. I refer to the case of Walter Scott, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, cases you've heard of. But I also refer to cases you've never heard of, going back 40 years to the case of Martin Tito Perez. Martin Tito Perez was a photographer and musician. He was a friend of my father's. He was arrested for playing his congas on the subway in East Harlem and turned up dead at the police station house mysteriously some hours later. This poem is called How We Could Have Lived or Died This Way, Epigraph. Not songs of loyalty alone are these, but songs of insurrection also, for I am the sworn poet of every dauntless rebel the world over. Walt Whitman. I see the dark-skinned bodies falling in the street
as their ancestors fell before the whip and steel, the last blood pooling, the last breath spitting. I see the immigrant street vendor flashing his wallet to the cops, shot so many times there are bullet holes in the soles of his feet. I see the deaf wood carver and his pocket knife crossing the street in front of a cop who yells, then fires. I see the drug raid, the wrong door kicked in, the minister's heart seizing up. I see the man hawking a fistful of cigarettes, the cop's choke hold that makes his wheezing lungs stop wheezing forever. I am in the crowd at the window, kneeling beside the body left on the asphalt for hours, covered in a sheet. I see the suicides. The conga player, handcuffed for drumming on the subway, hanged in the jail cell with his hands cuffed behind him. The suspect leaking blood from his chest in the back seat of the squad car, the 300-pound boy said to stampede, barehanded into the bullets drilling his forehead. I see the coroner nodding, the words he types in his report burrowing into the skin like more bullets. I see the government investigations stacking words, buzzing on the page, then suffocated as bees suffocate in a jar. I see the next black man fleeing as the fugitive slave once fled the slave catcher, shot in the back for a broken tail light. I see the cop handcuff the corpse. I see the rebels marching, hands upraised before the riot squad's faces in bandanas against the tear gas, and I walk beside them unseen. I see the poets who will write the songs of insurrection generations unborn will read or hear a century from now, words that make them wonder how we could have lived or died this way, how the descendants of slaves still fled and the descendants of slave catchers still shot them, how we awoke every morning without the blood of the dead sweating from every pore. So, La Lucha Sigue, and it goes on in all forms. I'm reading mostly from Vivas to those who have failed this afternoon. I also want to read a couple of poems from this book, which is likewise available. And it's a good thing, too, because this is a banned book. I'm a banned author. This is a banned book. Actually, this book has been banned twice. Once it was banned by the Texas penal system because it was allegedly going to cause riots among the inmates. They sent the form and checked the box when we tried to donate it. But more recently, this book was banned in the state of Arizona. It was banned as a part of the outlawing of the Mexican-American Studies program in Tucson, Arizona. Under House Bill 2281, HB 2281. More than 50 books in all were banned. So every noteworthy Latino, Native American author I can think of, but also such people as Howard Zinn, and James Baldwin, Henry David Thoreau, Jonathan Kozel, right? Alongside Sandra Cisneros and Ana Castillo, and Shakespeare. They banned The Tempest, and then there was media outcry, so they quickly unbanned The Bard. They had underestimated his worldwide popularity. But this is one of the books that was and remains banned. This is being litigated, even now. This book went out of print when the publisher, South Bend Press, went belly up. And so this book was going to go the way of most banned books. Most censored books simply disappear. Right? The media does not camp out on your front lawn. Misconception we have, once the book is banned, boomerang effect, and everybody buys it. No! Book goes out of print. Books die. But Northwestern University Press brought this book back into print last October. I'm very grateful to them for doing so. I'm going to read a poem here from the book. It's a collection of essays and poems called Zapata's Disciple. This is a short bilingual poem. I'm sure everybody in the room speaks Spanish, but in case you don't, there's a mistranslation in the poem, which makes perfect sense since for Latinos, the legal system to which I refer is mostly a series of mistranslations anyway. This is called Mariano Explains Yankee Colonialism to Judge Colleagues. Judge, does the prisoner understand his rights? Interpreter, ¿entiende usted sus derechos? Prisoner, pa'l carajo. Interpreter, yes. That's it. I don't know why they banned this book. No idea. I'm going to do that sort of, that you know, in Brooklyn, I grew up learning how to do this. What I do? What I do? I don't know. I have no idea why they would object to that poem. So, but you know, Arizona, somebody said if the states are laboratories for democracy, Arizona is a meth lab. So it's coming. It isn't here already. And yeah, the struggle goes on multiple fronts. How many people here are familiar with a man by the name of Oscar Lopez Rivera? Oscar Lopez Rivera, yes, some people here. Oscar Lopez Rivera, Puerto Rican political prisoner who was incarcerated for seditious conspiracy. Right? Many activists have been in the Puerto Rican community and Puerto Rico over the years. Oscar Lopez Rivera served 35 years in prison and was recently pardoned by President Barack Obama. As part of his campaign for exoneration, Oscar Lopez Rivera published a collection of his letters called Cartas a Karina, letters to his granddaughter from prison. And then somebody in his circle, in his community, contacted me and said, we want you to write the foreword for this book. And I said, who wants me to write the foreword for this book? And they said, Oscar. So I wrote it. And the foreword to the book, Cartas a Karina, begins with this poem. And this is a short poem about, of all things, the Puerto Rican flag. We're very big on the Puerto Rican flag. And most people look at the red, white, and blue and think, aha, it's just like the American flag. No, wrong. It is just like the Cuban flag, because there was a time when this flag came about in the late 19th century when Cuba and Puerto Rico were both fighting side by side for the independence of their respective islands. Flowers and bullets, epigraph. Cuba and Puerto Rico are two wings of the same bird. They receive flowers and bullets in the same heart. Lola Rodriguez Atillo. Tattoo the Puerto Rican flag on my shoulder. Stain the skin, red, white, and blue. Not the colors that snap over holiday parades or sag over the graves of veterans in the States, but the colors of Cuba, reversed. A flag for the rebels in the hills of Puerto Rico, dressed up by Puerto Rican exiles in the Cuban Revolutionary Party, bearded and bespectacled in the sleet of New York, wise men lost on their way to Bethlehem. That was 1895, the same year Jose Marti would die, poet, shot from a white horse in his first battle. Tattoo the Puerto Rican flag on my shoulder, so if I close my eyes forever in the cold and the doctors cannot tell the cause of death, you will know that I died like Jose Marti, with flowers and bullets in my heart. What time are we supposed to get out of here?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. I ain't going. Okay. Some people think that's my father. It's not my father. My father took the photograph.
This is a union organizer by the name of Edelmiro Huertas. But my father took his photograph. And my father is the subject of a series of 10 poems at the back of this book. I'm going to finish my reading with 3 poems. And these poems are part of a series I wrote when my father died in 2014. My father, Francisco Luis Espada, by birth, was born in Tualo, Puerto Rico in 1930. Came to this country in 1939 on a boat. He died in Pacifica, California in 2014. This first poem is essentially, it marks a ceremony. And it's a ceremony that will be familiar to anyone who has lost a parent. It's a ceremony of going through the stuff afterwards. Yeah? You're going through all this stuff, and it's coming at you from everywhere, and it's looking more and more like junk. You're thinking the unthinkable. I'm going to pull this out. And then you come across the treasure. And of course, the treasure only you, but treasure nonetheless. In my case, the treasure happened to be 2 Kodak boxes of Super 8 silent film. So many people think we stopped making silent movies in the 1920s. No, we were making silent movies in the 1960s, and we were very proud of the technology. And so it was. I found this film, and it was film of my first visit to Puerto Rico at the age of 11, originally from Brooklyn. And there was my father. He was alive again at the age of 38. And he was one of those guys that had a Dorian Gray thing going on, so, you know, he looked 28. So anyway, I'll read this poem. And of course, I have to mention that the all-purpose Puerto Rican word is in this poem. And that word is bendito, which has about 12 different meanings, depending on intonation, context. So, this is first of 3 poems from my father. It's called Haunt Me for My Father. I am the archaeologist. I sift the shards of you. Cufflinks, passport photos, a button from the March on Washington with a black hand shaking a white hand, letters in Spanish, your birth certificate from a town high in the mountains. I cup your silence, and the silence melts like ice in a cup. I search for you in 2 yellow Kodak boxes marked Puerto Rico, Nochebuena, Diciembre 1968. In the 8mm silence, the Espadas gather, elders born before the Spanish-American War, my grandfather on crutches after fracturing his fossil hip, his blind brother on a cane. You greet the elders, and they call you Tato, the name they call you there. Uncles and cousins sing in a chorus of tongues without sound, vibration of guitar strings stilled by an unseen hand, maracas shaking empty of seeds. The camera wobbles from the singers to the television, and the astronauts sending pictures of the moon back to Earth. Down by the river, women stir pound laundry on the rocks.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. All materials should be checked out by 5 p.m. Also, please be aware that our internet computers will shut down automatically 10 minutes before the library closes. If you need to pick up your print jobs, please do so now. If you need assistance, please go to the public desks on each floor so that we can help you before the library closes. Again, the library closes in 15 minutes.
I am 11 again. A boy from the faraway city of ice that felled my grandfather, startled after the blind man with the cane stroked my face with his hand dry as straw, crying out, Bendito. At the table, I hear only the silence that rises like the river in my big ears.
You sit next to me, clowning for the camera, tugging the lapels on your jacket, slicking back your black hair, brown skin darker from days in the sun. You slide your arm around my shoulder, your good right arm, your pitching arm, and my moon face radiates, and the mountain song of my uncles and cousins plays in my head. Watching you now, my face stings as it stung when my blind great uncle brushed my cheekbones, searching for his own face. When you died, Dapple, I took a razor to the movie looping in my head, cutting the scenes where you curled an arm around my shoulder, all the times you would squeeze the silence out of me so I could hear the cries and songs again. When you died, I heard only the silences between us, the shouts belling the air before the phone went dead, all the words melting like ice in a cup. That way, I could set my jaw and take my mother's hand at the mortuary, greet the elders in my suit and tie at the memorial, say all the right words. Yet, my face stings at last. I rewind and watch your arm drape across my shoulder over and over. A year ago, you pressed a Kodak slide of my grandfather into my hand and said, "Next time, stay longer." Now, in the silence that is never silent, I push the chair away from the table and say to you, "Sit down. Tell me everything. Haunt me." I mentioned the photograph on the cover of this book, and also my father took the photograph on the cover of this book as well. Both photographs were taken as part of something called the Puerto Rican Diaspora Documentary Project. My father was a documentary photographer, and he created this project. It was unique, it was original, no one had thought to do anything like it before with respect to the Puerto Rican community, and there were many people who told my father it could not be done. One of them was a famous photographer in his own right. His name was Cornell Kappa. And it was Cornell Kappa who said to my father, "No one wants to look at pictures of Puerto Ricans, Frank." My father used to repeat that phrase as motivation. And he would do that thing that parents do, and tell the same story over and over again, and you're part of that, that back and forth, you're the chorus. So my father would say, "Yeah, do you know what Cornell Kappa said to me?" Huh? No, what? "No one wants to look at pictures of Puerto Ricans, Frank." Well, my father's pictures of Puerto Ricans are now included in the collections of the Smithsonian Institution, the National Portrait Gallery, and the Library of Congress. And here's a poem about my father as a documentary photographer and activist. And I refer to a number of his images in this poem, including the one on the cover of this book. The poem is called Mad Love. Takes its title from a really terrible and wonderful 1934 horror movie with Peter Lorre. And there is an epigraph. I'll bet you can guess what it is. "No one wants to look at pictures of Puerto Ricans, Frank." Cornell Kappa. My brother said they harvested his corneas. I imagined the tweezers lifting the corneas from my father's eyes, delicate as the wings of butterflies mounted under glass. I imagined the transplant stitches finer than hair, eyes fluttering awake to the brilliance of an open window. This is not a horror movie. This is not Peter Lorre in Mad Love, the insane and jealous surgeon grafting the hands of a killer onto the forearms of a concert pianist who fumbles with the keys of the piano, flings knives with lethal aim, Moonlight Sonata, swept away by lust for homicide, his wife shrieking. The blind will see, like the captain of the slave ship who turned the ship around. Voices in the room will praise the Lord for the miracle, yet the eyes drinking light through my Father's eyes will not see the faces in the lens of his camera, faces of the faceless waking in the dark room. Not the tomato picker with a picket sign on his shoulder that says Reagan steals from the poor and gives to the rich. Not the fry cook in his fedora, staring at air as if he knew he would be stomped to death on the stoop for an empty wallet. Not the poet in a beret, grinning at the vision of shoes for all the shoeless people on the earth. Not the dancer hearing the piano tell her to spin and spin again. Not the grave digger and his machete, the bandana that keeps the dust of the dead from coating his tongue. Not the union organizer's spirits floating in the smoke of his victory cigar. Not the addict in rehab gazing at herself like a fortune teller gazing at the cards. Not the face half hidden by the star in the Puerto Rican flag, the darkness of his dissident's eye. Now that my Father cannot speak, they wait their turn to testify in his defense. Witnesses to the mad love that drove him to it. Okay, I see a sign that says 10 minutes. So I'm going to talk for 4 and then read a 6-minute poem. Thank you. My father had roots in San Antonio. In many ways, he was born here. When my father was 19 years old, he ran away from home and he joined the Air Force. He was stationed at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. The year was 1949. In December of 1949, my father boarded a Trailways bus here in San Antonio to take that bus through the South, to go home and spend his Christmas furlough with his family in New York City. He never made it. The bus stopped in Biloxi, Mississippi. They changed drivers. And my father was arrested for refusing to go to the back of the bus. He spent a week in jail. He said it was the best week of his life because he figured out what to do with the rest of it. He got out of the service. He went back to New York City. He began organizing his community. And the rest, as they say, is history. My father became a legendary community organizer, a civil rights activist, a documentary photographer, a leader, many would say the leader of the Puerto Rican community in New York City in the 1960s and early 70s. That's a community of 1 million people. Well, he did some extraordinary things. He even spoke at the same rally with Malcolm X, then got down off the podium and took Malcolm's photograph. How do you write about somebody like that when he dies? It was my charge to write a poem for my father's memorial service in Brooklyn in May of 2014. How the hell do you do that? This guy was like the Puerto Rican Paul Bunyan. Well, I had to hit upon a metaphor. I found a metaphor about Mori Vivi. You know Mori Vivi? I don't know what you might call it here. Mori Vivi, of course, it literally means I died, I lived. It refers to the pan-tropical weed, the Mimosa pudica. It goes by many names. Sleeping grass. In Jamaica, it's called Old Lady's Shame. That's because if you touch the leaves, they curl up, then they unfold again. And at night, they curl up, and at first light, they unfold again. I had found it. This was the metaphor for my father, the trickster, right? His many lives, his many narrow escapes, his final death and his ultimate rebirth, because he's here with us now. Trust me on that. So I'll read you this poem. This is the poem I read at his memorial service, and I'll close with this poem now. It is indeed called El Morivivi, in memoriam, Frank Espada, 1930 to 2014. The Spanish means, I died, I lived. In Puerto Rico, the leaves of El Morivivi close in the dark and open at first light. The fronds curl at a finger's touch and then unfurl again. My father, a mountain born of mountains, the tallest Puerto Rican in New York, who scraped doorways, who could crack the walls with the rumble of his voice, kept El Morivivi growing in his ribs. He would die, then live. My father spoke in the tongue of El Morivivi, teaching me the parable of Joe Fleming, who screwed his lit cigarette into the arms of the spicks he caught flapping like fish. My father was a bony boy, the nerves in his back crushed by the ILO Coal and Ice Company, the load he lifted up too many flights of stairs. 3 times they would meet to brawl for a crowd after school. The first time, my father opened his eyes to gravel and the shoes of his enemy. The second time, he rose and dug his arm up to the elbow in the monster's belly so badly did he want to tear out the heart and eat it. The third time, Fleming did not show up. And the boys with cigarette burns clapped this spindly champion on the back all the way down the street. Fleming would become a cop, fired for breaking bones in too many faces. He died smoking in bed, a sheet of flame up to his chin. There was a Morivivi sprouting in my father's chest. He would die, then live. He spat obscenities like sunflower seeds at the driver who told him to sit at the back of the bus in Mississippi, then slipped his cap over his eyes and fell asleep. He spent a week in jail, called it the best week of his life, strode through the jailhouse door and sat behind the driver of the bus on the way out of town, his Air Force uniform all that kept the noose from his neck. He would come to know the jailhouse again among hundreds of demonstrators ferried by police to Hart Island on the East River, where the city of New York stacks the coffins of anonymous and stillborn bodies. Here, Confederate prisoners once wept for the stars and bars. Now, the prisoners sang freedom songs. The jailers outlawed phone calls, so we were sure my father must be a body like the bodies rolling waterlogged in the East River till he came back from the island of the dead, black hair combed meticulously. When the riots burned in Brooklyn night after night, my father was a peacemaker on the corner with a megaphone. A fiery chunk of concrete fell from the sky and missed his head by inches. My mother would tell me, "Your father is out dodging bullets." He spoke at a rally with Malcolm X, incantatory words billowing through the bundled crowd, lifting hands and faces. "Teach!" they cried. My father clicked a photograph of Malcolm as he bent to hear a question finger pressed against the chin. 2 months later, the assassin stampeded the crowd to shoot Malcolm, blood leaping from his chest as he fell. My father would die too, but then he would live again. After every riot, every rally, every arrest, every night in jail, the change from his pockets landing hard on the dresser at 4 a.m. Every time I swore he was gone for good. My father knew the secrets of El Morivivi, that he would die, then live. He drifted off at the wheel, drove into a guardrail, shook his head, and walked away without a web of scars or fractures. He passed out from the heat in the subway, toppled onto the tracks, and somehow